What if episode 3 were good? Like, really good. What if we return to the same hypothetical universe where I'm a story exec at Fox, and we're just gonna make sure that episode 3 is a little better than what we got? And while working on this trilogy, there was a big question that dictated a lot of what I did. What purpose should the prequel serve? And that answer stems from how you watch the films. If you're watching them in the order in which they were released, then the prequels can be granted a fair amount of fan service. But if you view them as the numbers would suggest, sequentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then those moments of fan service are in fact detrimental to the overall story of the later saga. If you see the birth of Luke and Leia, or if you see Vader's suit, it's no surprise when Vader's Luke's father or Luke and Leia are siblings. We're now ahead of the characters for these monumental moments, which diminishes the monumentalness of the moments. So for that very reason, when tackling episode 3, especially the tail end of things, I decided, while nice, a lot of that fan service, it's just gotta go. So sorry, we're not gonna be seeing Luke and Leia called by name, and we're certainly not gonna be seeing Vader's suit. So recognizing that some of those things won't be happening, let's dive into this what if. Starting things off with the title crawl, things are basically the same. We're in the midst of the Clone Wars, General Grievous is running the show, but rather than immediately catching up with our boys as they rescue the Chancellor, I'm shifting the setting a bit as they're storming a separatist base on Utapau. This battle, above all else, should feel fun and breezy, and show that 1, the Republic is definitely winning in this war, and 2, again, Obi-Wan and Anakin work really well together. Because, like I said in episode 2, we have to see what it is that we're losing when this friendship falls apart. So they win, hurrah! And now we're reintroduced to 2 more familiar faces, with Padme being piloted in by Owen to officiate terms of surrender. And at night, we see all 4 of them discussing what the future holds once this war is over. Owen talks about how he can't wait to live it up in Coruscant. Obi-Wan discusses how he's looking to further his training and the training of other Jedi. Padme is looking to strengthen the Senate to ensure that this sort of fracturing and war never happens again. And Anakin? Well, we've seen from that previous battle that he's clearly more capable as far as combat is concerned, but we also learn that he's been pouring himself into his studies of all things dealing with the Force because he wants nothing more than to sit on the Jedi Council, but has been rejected 3 times so far. This conversation basically clues our audience into where all of our characters are, and, lets us know about all the things that none of them are going to get, because things are just gonna get worse. But they don't know that yet, and so happy fun times. And from there we transition to the opposite side of the coin as we go to the separatist base on Mustafar, where, man oh man, General Grievous is pissed. And this is great for a number of reasons. Because I don't know about you, but when I saw George's episode 3, I was really disappointed with Grievous, because he seems like he would be a really cool character, and apparently he is. But if you're just watching the movie and haven't done the summer reading of watching the animated miniseries, then you're only seeing a neutered fraction of the character, which is absolutely bonkers when he's one of the primary antagonists of the film. I mean, Boba Fett was also introduced in an animated form before his film, but he still got a proper introduction in Empire. It just really bothers me that Grievous is supposed to be a bad, but everything we see in the film begs to differ. Mace Windu even has a line that says General Grievous will run and hide like he always does. Like he always does? I'm fixing it. It's okay. Let's move on. So Grievous is pissed and the Separatist leaders are scared, and Sidious is like, guys, relax. The Republic may be hitting hard, but they're also spreading themselves way thin and leaving themselves super exposed. Grievous, go for the heart, and my main man Maul will back you up in your endeavors. And as Sidious ends the call with those goofs, he turns to Darth Maul, who's like, hey, buddy, super cool that you're running this whole war puppet show thing, but we've got that whole unfinished business about Obi-Wan and how I really want to kill him. So can we make that happen sooner than later? And Sidious is like, hey dude, totally get you. And don't you worry, all those loose ends are going to be tied up real soon. And from there we bounce to the Jedi Temple where we see Anakin being praised for his acts of valor, yet still not receiving the rank of Jedi Master. And this time Anakin doesn't take things lying down, he's a bit more cocky and combative and wants to know why. Why is he being passed over when people who are clearly less qualified than he is being granted a seat at the council? And Mace Windu's like, whoa, slow your arrogant roll there, buddy. I'm sensing a great amount of anger in you. Obi-Wan, who now sits on the council, tries to go to bat for Anakin, and is like, well, I'd be pretty angry too if I kept getting rejected without an explanation. At which point Mace turns to Obi-Wan and says, you promised Qui-Gon that you would train Anakin in the ways of a Jedi, and you have. But there was no part of that promise that meant that we had to grant him the rank of Jedi Master. And this is a huge bomb for Anakin, because you have to remember, he was born a slave. So to become a Jedi Master and sit on the council would be granting him a huge amount of freedom. But suddenly, there's a ceiling on that freedom, and what's worse, in being promised from Qui-Gon to Obi-Wan, it's seen in his eyes as an exchange of ownership. So the whole idea that they were friends or brothers almost was all just a lie. And that stings. So now Anakin, completely humiliated, storms out of the temple and runs into Padme, who's like, "Hey, I've got great news, but how did everything go in there?" And Anakin's like, "I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about anything right now. I just gotta get out of here." And Padme tries to cheer him up, but at that moment, Obi-Wan steps out and Anakin hightails it out of there, not wanting to talk with him at all. Obi-Wan then asks Padme if maybe she can talk to Anakin and smooth things over because he knows that the two of them are close. Padme says she will, but at the moment she wants to grant Anakin his privacy, and so she'll just go on back to the Senate. Naturally, were Anakin to have a little more time to process this, or Padme to talk to him, things most likely would be okay. But time is not on the side of our heroes, as General Grievous and his Separatist fleet jump out of lightspeed just above Coruscant and make their attack. So now we have a perfect opportunity to show off General Grievous as a ferocious as he crashes his ship into the Senate and starts taking hostages and slaying guards left and right. And if we wanted to be especially brutal to showcase a point like this, we could have a situation where like a Jedi comes up trying to defend some senators or something, and he manages to slice off one of General Grievous's hands only to then be punched completely through with the singed metal, which admittedly might be a little too much, but it'd be really cool. In the midst of this chaos, Lars runs in to help Padme, and Padme is helping Chancellor Palpatine escape and stays back to provide cover fire with the security detail. Despite this, Palpatine still gets scooped up by droids who take off with their precious hostage, only to be pursued by some incoming Jedi. And as they fly after the kidnapped Chancellor, Obi-Wan tries to reconcile with Anakin, but Anakin doesn't want to hear any of it. He just wants to rescue the Chancellor, which will undoubtedly prove his worth to the Council. And we can see right here that Anakin's view is starting to shift. He's thinking less about the big picture and more just about himself. So now we find ourselves in a very similar situation to George's Episode 3. But rather than facing off against Dooku, it's Maul. Obi-Wan and Maul have obvious history together, but now Anakin also has a horse in this race, as he was previously humiliated by Maul, and his present anger at the Jedi Council only fuel his fury. However, now, the two are fighting very different fights. One for justice and one for glory. They aren't fighting in sync like we previously saw, leading to several instances where they're more hindrance than help. But while things look dire for a moment, the two manage to pull it together and ultimately stand victorious over the bested Maul. And that's when Palpatine issues the command. Kill him. And it's at that moment that Maul's like, "Oh, I'm the loose end." And if this were Obi-Wan from a movie ago, man, Maul would be dead like that. But Obi-Wan has grown and is no longer seeking revenge, so he turns to Palpatine and says, no, he must stand trial. And truthfully, in this moment, Obi-Wan is as big as he can be. He's bested the man who killed his master, and he's bested his emotions. And Palpatine's like, "Hey, that's super great and all. Yeah, I know, he should stand trial. But hey, Anakin, why don't you kill him?" And Anakin's like, "No, I can't do that." And that's when Palpatine really starts to needle. "Anakin, you can't simply let this monster live. If we let him live, bureaucracy will just bog down his inevitable fate. The Separatists will undoubtedly break him free, and he will strike back 1,000 times more furious. You can't let that happen, Anakin. Think of all those you hold dear who will pay the price. Think of your wife." To which Obi-Wan's like, "What?" And since Obi-Wan is our main character in this film, it only makes sense that the audience, like the case with Luke, makes this massive discovery at the same time. So we all get to say, "What?" Obi-Wan is stunned and hurt by this secret, but still reaches out to his conflicted friend. "Anakin, think about this. This is not the way of a Jedi Master." To which Anakin replies, somewhat defeated, "But I'll never be a Jedi Master. Will I?" And he force pushes Obi-Wan out of the way. As Obi-Wan falls to the ground, he force pulls Anakin's lightsaber away right as he's about to strike, leaving Anakin completely disarmed and full of rage. So he force chokes Maul. And it's at this point that Palpatine knows who his next apprentice will be. And from there we bounce back to the Jedi Temple, where the Council is none too happy with Anakin, and they're like, "Yo dude, remember how we were trying to find a Sith that was controlling the Senate? Well, you just killed the one dude who might have known who that was. You, sir, are out." And now Anakin finds himself spiraling, and there's nothing that Obi-Wan can do, only putting a further wedge between the two. So Anakin leaves the temple completely dejected, only to be greeted by Palpatine. My boy, don't you worry about those Jedi. You've shown a great amount of dedication to the Republic, and you've sent a very strong message by killing that savage. And you want to know how I'm going to reward you? You're going to get the job that I previously had, which actually makes you in charge of the Jedi. What do you think about that? Pretty sweet deal, huh? You see, while I don't think that George's introduction of Sith lore is a bad idea by any means, I think it's more fun if Anakin's seduction to the dark side is a little more subverted. Hey, that thing you did, embracing the dark side, was pretty great. Maybe if you did that embracing the dark side more, you'd be even greater. Huh? And now that Palpatine is steering Anakin's trajectory, he's quick to twist the knife and tell Anakin that sadly, during the attack, Padme was taken hostage by the Separatists. And now on Mustafar, we see General Grievous meeting the hostages. Padme calls out that the Republic won't stand for this, and they should surrender now or face death. And Grievous says, however things go now, those hostages shouldn't plan on leaving here alive. At which point, Padme turns to Owen and is like, okay, so the new plan is escape. Cutting now to the Jedi Temple, we see Anakin leading a tactics meeting with the Jedi and generals. Mace Windu questions some of Anakin's decisions, at which point Anakin, who is now plenty stressed because Padme is a hostage and wanting to impress Palpatine, turns things on Mace and is like, okay, you're right, the Jedi are clearly our best bet. Perhaps then it should be you who's leading the charge. Maybe you'd like to be in the front lines. Perhaps not the most tactically advantageous move, but it's one driven by emotion, which is something that he's embracing more and more. And now, very briefly, I'd like to halt momentum and discuss how this battle is my alternative to Order 66. Because, let's face it, Order 66 makes no sense. Like, never mind how ludicrous it sounds that there's a situational order that effectively bombs your own military. The reason that Order 66 is complete BS is what takes place in the Mos Eisley Cantina in A New Hope. If you recall, Luke finds himself in a bit of a confrontation with one of the members at the bar, and Obi-Wan is quick to step in and try to resolve things. However, when things get a little too heated, a lightsaber comes out and he lops off the arm of a dude. Now, this is incredibly important because Obi-Wan then doesn't say, remember Order 66, which says that all Jedi are enemies to the Republic, maybe we should hightail it out of here and I shouldn't have used the weapon that is a signature of the Jedi. Instead, they mosey on over to Han Solo's booth and continue to conduct business. Even if the cantina is known for housing unsavory sorts, there are stormtroopers outside, so you certainly wouldn't want to be bringing attention to yourself like that. So what I'm proposing as a means to eradicate the Jedi, as it were, is to more or less have them be cannon fodder to this great battle. If Mace Windu's being placed up front, the Jedi are being placed up front. And with the Separatists bringing their A-game, there aren't going to be many survivors on either side. So the Jedi aren't completely eradicated, no, but their numbers are vastly diminished. Anyway, brief aside done, let's continue with story. After this briefing, Obi-Wan is very distraught with what he's seeing, and he meets with Yoda and they discuss the responsibilities of a Jedi. And Obi-Wan comes to realize that he's still very much responsible for Anakin's well-being. So now the Republic is on the move, headed to Mustafar to really bring it to the Separatists. And Separatists have wrangled in all their resources to meet the might of the Republic. Palpatine and Anakin are giving commands in flight above the planet, and things immediately go crazy on the ground with blaster fire and lightsabers. Now during this battle above ground, Padme and the Senators have realized that this is a prime opportunity to escape, and they make their way through the Separatist base, accruing weapons and protection as they go. Even though he's far removed from this battle, Anakin is sensing the great amount of anguish and pain that everybody on the battlefield is experiencing, so he quietly slips away to find a ship to pilot down to the surface. As Anakin sensed, Obi-Wan and the rest of the Jedi are feeling a tremendous strain, and at this point we get to see some casualties up close, one of them being Mace Windu, and actually gets to go down in a blaze of glory. And if we want to add a little more impact to his death, from up on board the ship, Yoda can scowl over the loss of life. But while things look grim, not all hope is lost, as Padme, Lars, and some of the Senators manage to overtake the Separatist anti-air guns from within, now allowing for more troops to land on the ground and effectively turn the tide in battle. Padme and Lars wave down at Obi-Wan as he charges forward with the rest of the Jedi, and he takes comfort in knowing that they're still alive. And then they rush off in search of commandeering an enemy ship to make their escape. General Grievous now finds himself and his troops being pushed back into the base completely, and he contacts Sidious, now in a bit of a panic. The Jedi scum in our army have breached our base, what do we do? To which Sidious replies, simple, die. And right as Anakin lands and starts to run towards the compound, the whole thing explodes. Anakin is absolutely shell-shocked. So much of his life and his future is gone in an instant, and he charges towards the burning wreckage in an absolute fury in search of Padme. Obi-Wan is incredibly hurt, buried under rubble, but alive, and he sees Anakin running towards what's left of the base and makes slow chase after him. Anakin runs and jumps through the rubble and eventually comes on Grievous's mangled body. He's struck by extreme emotion, hatred, grief. It all comes pouring down on him, and Anakin takes this all out on Grievous's lifeless frame, shredding it. And that's when Obi-Wan reaches him. Obi-Wan tries desperately to tell Anakin that Padme's alive, but when Anakin asks Obi-Wan to lead him to her, he can't. And Anakin promptly says, "Oh, I see. Another lie from the man I thought to be a brother." And then he accuses Obi-Wan and the Jedi Council of being intimidated by him, and that's why they wouldn't grant him a seat, because they were jealous of his power. And Obi-Wan's like, "Yo, I don't know what Palpatine's been telling you, but that's some crazy talk." And Anakin laughs. "It's not crazy. For the first time I see. You thought I'd be blind to this sort of manipulation, but now, nobody's my master. Now get out of my way." Anakin lunges at Obi-Wan, and what we get now is one of the most emotionally fueled battles yet, with vastly different motivations for each of our fighters. Anakin's fight is fueled by rage, trying to kill the traitorous Obi-Wan, while Obi-Wan is looking to disarm and reconcile, while weighed down with the tires of war and remorse at letting Anakin slip so far. And this battle should not be a bunch of spectacle. We don't need swinging on chains, balancing on pipes, and floating lava hover carrying things, because it's about a broken friendship, properly reflected in the arena in which they now fight. And as they sink towards doom, Obi-Wan recognizes that Anakin's swings are weighted with hatred, leaving him unbalanced and exposed. Anakin's aggression and arrogance can be turned in on itself, leading to Obi-Wan sadly besting his Padawan, making it a very bittersweet victory, as Obi-Wan ultimately leaves Anakin to die as he curses his name. A more positive victory, however, is being felt by Palpatine up above. They did it! They crushed those separatists! Hurrah, hurrah! In the midst of this celebration, Yoda interrupts to talk with Palpatine, and what starts as simple counsel from Yoda, it becomes abundantly clear that Yoda has realized that Palpatine is the orchestrator of this whole thing, and is in fact a Sith Lord. What's worse is Yoda has also come to the realization that there's not much that he can do. Were he to attack Palpatine, that'd be seen as treason and jeopardize the lives of the few remaining Jedi. However, if he does nothing, well, in both cases, he realizes that he loses. But similarly, at least in this more public setting, Yoda can't be outright attacked by Palpatine. So more or less, Yoda gets a smile at Palpatine and say, "This shit ain't over." Or, I'm sorry, over it ain't. And with that, he jettisons himself off the ship. Down on the surface, Obi-Wan is ragged and forlorn. In a haze, he reaches out to Yoda as Yoda drifts into exile. The two clue one another into what's transpired, and Obi-Wan asks, "What are we going to do? How are we going to take out the Sith?" To which Yoda replies, "This isn't our fight. Like the Sith takeover, this overthrow will need to be internal and over time. But we will have a part to play. We just must be patient. Take care, Obi-Wan Kenobi. There is still much that you have to do." And before Obi-Wan can get clarification as to what, the haze clears and he sees in front of him Padme and Owen, and he rushes to them as they leave the surface. And now we get a quick bit of light action as Owen pilots the Separatist ship through the Republic's armada, as Obi-Wan recounts all the grisly details of what's transpired and how they've all been played. And this also marks the start of the lie that Anakin died in battle at the hands of the dark side. Naturally, Padme laments the loss of Anakin, and it only gets worse as she wants nothing to do with this corrupt republic. The only silver lining she can see is that she, Lars, and Obi-Wan are presumed dead, so now they can quietly reach out to Padme's brother, Bail Organa, who has his own qualms with the Republic, but is in their good graces, and they can operate quietly in isolation in the hidden Gungan city. But there is a hitch, and it comes in the form of the good news that Anakin never received from Padme, and it's that Padme's pregnant. So now on Alderaan, Obi-Wan, Lars, and Padme discuss the fate of the child. Padme naturally wants to take care of the child, but she also doesn't want to endanger it. Obi-Wan then offers to take the child, and perhaps he can train it. But it's at this point that Owen just loses it. Neither of you are fit to raise a child. Just look at what happened to Anakin. You with your politics and you with your wizardry, you drove him down this path of craving power because he didn't know what other path there was. Couldn't you see that he was just a man? Give me the child, and I'll make sure that it's not exposed to any of this. And Padme and Obi-Wan realize, yeah, they really messed things up. And as that reality sinks in, music swells as we montage what the future holds for everyone. We see Palpatine being hailed a hero and granted yet more power. Padme, now broken, having given up so much. And Owen, now with the infant Luke Skywalker, returning to Tatooine, the place he swore he'd never go back to. All seems grim in that galaxy far, far away. But destiny is not yet written, for there is an ebb and flow to the Force, and the Force will be with us, always. And that's how we end Episode 3. So now, here we are, starting to close things up. And like I said at the start, with the What If for Episode 1, you can see with a little bit of recalibration, our prequel trilogy can be shifted to focus on Obi-Wan, and our story is better for it. We've seen Obi-Wan grow from a Padawan romanticizing the valiantry of war to one who's seen the costs and hardships and is wiser for it. And that then perfectly transitions us to the original Star Wars. We've now seen Obi-Wan as a hero front and center, so it makes sense why Princess Leia would see him as her only hope. And BT dubs, that's baby Leia right there, but the sequential viewer will assume that it's Luke, which then preserves the sibling surprise and still allows for Leia to remember her mother. Like I said up top, we don't want to undercut these sorts of surprises. And while we're speaking in that transition window from 3 to 4, let's also just touch ever so briefly on the dark side. And it should be noted I am speaking specifically to what the movies have shown us of the dark side up to the point of this recording. Now, I don't know about you, but I always saw the reversal of Force lightning to make Palpy all pruny was a bit quick and lazy. In fact, in my mind, I always saw the dark side as a bit cancerous in nature. It's a deal with the devil. It's something you can tap into, but at a high cost. So the suit isn't a symbol of a broken friendship, but how Anakin was willing to destroy himself for power and control. So in effect, he's building himself his own tomb, making it that much more powerful when he asks for Luke to take the mask off. He recognizes what he's always been. He was a slave all his life, last to the dark side. But in choosing to take the mask off, to embrace the good inside him, is his casting off his shackles. And in death, for the first time, he is free. And so when you take a step back and view the big picture, all 6 films, you see the fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker, presented through the past with Obi-Wan and the future with Luke. And that, I think, is a pretty good what if.